outside, bring in a flower or something, and type in the chat box when you get back something you brought back from the outside. So a quick 3-minute break. See you in 3:03. Okay, everyone, I like that Pacific sunflower. If we could take a look at it, that would be awesome. Nice. Looks like Justice Yazzie is going outside. Nice. Yes, pick up your son too. What kind of rock? Blueberries, that sounds good. Oh, blackberries, sorry. Solar lanterne. 100 degrees. Wow. All right, let's bring everybody back in. We have 1.5 more hours to go. Thank you to everyone who is here and learning to make that shift. I will give it over to our next moderator, Kail Juice.
Hangwa. Ja, Christy, thank you, Jada. I don't know who's all back, but I need to make sure that my Hawaiian sisters are online. I'm so honored and I'm so blessed today. My name is Kail Juice. I live in the village of Heidelberg on Prince of Wales in Southeast Alaska. I am so honored to be a part of today because I really truly believe everything we do has a reason and a connection. And you are meeting and you are among individuals today who have spent their lives doing really good things with their life. And so I was not going to, I'm going to defer my time over to my sisters from Hawaii, because I am so in love with what they're doing. Because when you speak about language, when you speak about culture, when you speak about connection to land, you are speaking my language. And so I would say to the students that I heard speaking today, embrace your culture, embrace your language. We are nothing without it. And as much as you embraced your university training, go home and embrace those languages and the way of thinking, because that's what they're trying to get across to us. I'm going to introduce, the way I'm going to do this is we are a panel, and it's called Words of Wisdom, International and National Cousins and Relations. And as most of you who come from Native American communities know, our cousins are like our sisters. They are our sisters. And in most of our clan ways, we're very connected. So there's many on this call today that are so connected in what they're doing with their lives and what they've done with their lives. And for you young people, what you will choose to do with your lives. And all I can say to the ones that are sitting, that I'm listening to, is please choose your mentors. Choose who you're going to mentor. I've done that already. I know who I'm going to mentor. Actually, one of them is on this call today. So it's how we develop them and love them. So I want to introduce Auntie. Everybody got to hear a few of her precious words, and we already fell in love with her. So Auntie Lynette, I don't want to say your names wrong, so I'll just say Auntie Lynette, and Manu, Dr. Manu Elver Meyer from the Aloha State. They're both dedicated to the promotion and the perpetuation of their rich Hawaiian culture. They're both renowned in their Ho'oponopono. If I say that wrong, forgive me. They're practitioners, and I want to say the words that came from looking at Auntie's work is respected elder, Kuma, Kapuna. She is lengthy in her experiences of knowledge of Hawaiian culture. She teaches Hawaiian spirituality and health and healing, cleansing rituals. She is everything that we wish to be in our culture. She is the richness, the money, the wealth. She's everything into she's their spiritual wealth. With her today is Manu, and I talked to her a little bit, and I just can't help but fall in love with my sisters in Hawaii. She's the fifth daughter of Emma Aluli, forgive me if I say it wrong, and Henry Meyer. She works in the field of the philosophy of knowledge. It's her, and the role of it in worldwide awakening. What I loved about her really quickly is that she's a Hawaiian elder. She's a scholar, an activist, an author, a healer, a coach. And this is where we become sisters. And so I feel really strong. She comes from a large and diverse group of scholars, activists who have spent their lives in Hawaiian education, justice, land reclamation, law, health, cultural revitalization, arts education, prison reform, transformational economics, food sovereignty, Hawaiian philosophy, and music. So I'm just so honored to be in your presence. But with that, I'm going to introduce these ladies to give a talk. They have a half hour. I've deferred you the time because what you have to say is so important to all of the people who are listening. And then I will introduce Sonia Shah. She will come on, I'll introduce her. She'll give a talk for 15 minutes. And then I will introduce the Honorable David Rush, who will close out our session. With that, I turn it over to you. And the only word I know is aloha. Thank you, ladies. You're on.
You chose the right word, thinking over living, which is the Hawaiian way, shaped by living on an island run by ocean that forced us to come to grips already with how do we use the finite resources that we have. because there was no connection to the continent after we lost voyaging. And so our resources was what we found on the land, in the air, in the ocean that surrounded us, maybe 3, no more than 5 miles out. And so that's very limited. But we also realize we came from a society that recognized the spiritual forces of our people that provided us these resources, and that our spiritual relationships were embedded in forms rooted in the land, in animal forms, in natural phenomena, in the heavens, and that man was created to have use of the resources and to express the gratefulness with the spiritual powers. So what we have been reared with is that there is deep connection of man
I'm sorry, Auntie Lynette.
powers.
I'm sorry, Auntie Lynette. Can you hear me?
That
Wait, Christy, we took off her earplugs. Auntie, I took off your earplugs. Now you just, can you hear us easier?
can they hear me now?
Yeah,
No?
you got it.
Okay, let me take this out.
Okay, good.
I think it's just choppy.
Christy, we took off the earplugs. It might be easier now. Can you hear us
Okay.
better
Yes.
now? Okay, Auntie, with this stuff right there.
Yeah, so aloha is really the foundation of our existence. It's unconditional care, concern, and sharing. It was about us. We abuse and misuse these resources. The balance and harmony that allowed us to thrive as a people, as humans, is disrupted. And what I learned from my grandmother was that the relationship between the spiritual forces, earth, and mankind was sacred. It should be maintained in positive ways, and that our spiritual gods were embedded in manifestations on the earth, within the soil, in the stone, within the mountains, within the marine life, within those of the air, the natural phenomena, the winds, the rain, the clouds, the light, nature, and everything else. And we understood, Tutu says, it was for our use to enjoy and to thrive and to live and to expand our knowledge. But we also realized too that man is human and they're prone to rubbing elbows the wrong way. And that's to be expected. But how do we deal with that? Tutu says they did ho'oponopono. It's the recognition that when there is misuse and abuse, you're out of harmony, you're out of balance, and you gotta restore it. And so our relationship with the Aina was to devise and to recognize what we use, we have to plant back for the next person, for the others and allow enough time for its growth to be useful at a certain age or time of maturity. We also realize taking care of these resources is taking care of the multiple body forms of the big gods, the higher powers, which in our language means kinolao. Kinolao is multiple body forms. And this gets to that point was made earlier. You got to know the function of the language and what its usefulness is, as well as how do you perpetuate and allow it to flourish and thrive. That idea came up in modern times when we realized the prohibition of the spoken language also led the way to forget the underlying meaning with positive mental health practices. I'm a social worker. I have my degree in social work. And so I focus on behavior and mental health practices. And Tutu came to help us understand words and concepts that could apply in social work in helping families. And so in Ho'oponopono, we learned that the folks of all, because they use it, they all children and family were influenced with it. And that because they were raised with it, they had this knowledge as they became adults when they established their own families. That connection was interfered with once we could not speak the language. So that there are Hawaiians today who thrive on using the word aloha. And our aloha spirit goes out to everybody. But what we've forgotten is, with the aloha spirit comes kuleana, accountability. With privilege comes responsibility. And so we have allowed our aloha spirit to be used as a commercial, as a commodity, because that's what Hawaii is known for. And we have to stop it because it's not the true Hawaiian way. And so that idea is also reflected in Ho'oponopono. How do we help family members who contribute to a situation where the relationships are out of balance? We have to return the balance so that it is pono and it is lokahi. We have come to realize that the process for pono begins when you're young as a child in the family. The process for ho'oponopono is to take it outside, beyond the small nuclear family, into the ohana, the extended family. And so we have reached a point in our living and thriving to recognize recognize many
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Angelina.
modern
Manu, if you're there, can you hear me?
families,
Manu?
Hawaiian,
Lisa?
have lost
Yes, yes. I'm so sorry. I was worried about this happening because we're both in very remote
they
places.
don't have the knowledge.
Hmm.
I could turn off the video for her and see if the sound comes across a little more
Okay, hon,
clearly.
that sounds
Although, did she just drop out?
she might have.
Okay.
Yeah. So, oh, I apologize, everybody. We had suspicion that this might happen. So I will, with that in mind, I will move on to our next presenter, which is Sonia Shaw. And if we get a call back in, then we can just reserve some time at the end to have their closing remarks. I'd like to introduce Sonia. She began an initiative called the Hemisna Collective in Northern California, and they work to respond to trauma that fosters wellness. She is very experienced in restorative justice. She also works at the California Institute of Integral Studies. What I did was I looked up what that was, and I found a little quote that kind of summed up Sonia's. All of my panelists have amazing backgrounds, but this kind of summed her up, and this is found in the directory to their membership. We provide an excellent, multifaceted education for people committed to transforming themselves, others, and the world. And I think that just summed up Sonia so beautifully. And with that, I'd like to introduce her as our next speaker on our panel for Peacekeepers, Words of Wisdom from our national and international relatives. And is Sonia online?
Yep, I'm right here. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, that's great. Oh, I was hanging off of Auntie's every last word. I felt like I was listening to the history of the beginning of the universe, and to get cut short in that was like COVID-19. So when Auntie comes back, I will make sure that I stick it to 15 minutes, and hopefully she'll keep talking. I just wanted to start by saying I'm really humbled to be here as a very grateful cousin in relationship to peacemaking, and to talk about the restorative justice and this practice that we really are like the children of the grandmother and the grandfather peacemaking, who in the urban non-Indian Western world are learning to remember and learning to recollect sort of our lost collectivity and our lost indigeneity. So my name is Sonia, and I come by via my ancestors, who are from the northwestern part of India. They were rural farmers who moved to the city. And then my parents, who moved to the United States, and I live in California. And I wanted to center sort of this time to talk about how do we really, those of us that live in Western, this sort of Western non-Indian urban setting, how do we remember and how do we practice the same concepts of peacemaking or restorative justice that are really about that beautiful, incredible paradigm shift into non-separation, into reciprocity, into love, into compassion, into interdependence, and into healing and transforming harm that is really, really rooted in relationship and community. And you know, this story is, I think, a story of both triumph, but also comes with a lot of loss and a lot of grief. And when you don't have the same access and proximity to your cultural stories, your nature stories, your traditional stories. I'm gonna get emotional about it. When those are the things that hold you and ground you, when speaking to the trees tells you what to say, there's a lot of grief and there's a lot of loss and there's probably a lot of shame as well. But we have found each other in these urban settings, and we have found ways to come together and to recollect and to remember these practices that really live in our hearts. And so I want to share some things I've learned by drawing on my memory and by drawing on my experiences. And I think I need to start a little bit by saying a little bit more about where I'm from, because I think the parallel journey of migration and immigration is the parallel journey of loss and remembering in this sort of restorative justice world. So as I said, my family, my ancestors are from rural India. They moved to the city. My grandmothers were married off at very young ages. They couldn't read or write, but they do 2,000, 3,000 folk songs. And my parents moved to the United States. My father came on a steamship, and my mother was forced to come by my father. While there's, of course, some strong patriarchy that runs in my family, I also know that my parents did the very best that they could with what they had. So I grew up in this tiny little village called Manhattan, with 10 million people on the 11th floor of a 20-story building. And as a child, I remember feeling like there was something deeply wrong with the world, that I lived in a box in the sky, and that I couldn't feel the earth or the plants. And I have a really, really strong memory and story of the first time I really remember individualism and capitalism and this sense of separation. I was about 7 years old, and I used to go to this public school. It was 5 blocks from my house on 92nd Street. I grew up on 97th Street. And I had these 4 friends, and every time there was this white truck that sat outside our school, and we could go to the truck and buy candy. And when it was my turn to buy candy, I would buy, I'd have 25 cents, and I would buy everybody 5-cent candies. They were delicious. And when it was all of the other 4 people's turns, they would buy themselves 20-cent candies, and the rest of us 1-cent candies. And never thought anything of it. And I just really remember being so confused because everyone had a 5-cent candy, my candy tasted like it cost 25 cents or $1, but it didn't seem to work that way. And it was like this rude awakening into this culture, a very urban Western New York culture of capitalism and individuality and individualism and separation and hierarchy and money. And I just remember feeling so isolated and far and culturally just confused because my family was so different. What we lived in our home was so different. With the backdrop of that, I also experienced some early child sexual abuse that created a lot of confusion for me, a lot of sadness, a lot of isolation. And my childhood didn't feel, it just felt, like a wash. And it wasn't until, and it felt very dark, and it wasn't until I got into a really strong, safe sort of university experience. I was very thankful for that university panel, that I felt held and safe enough to really explore kind of that past, all the different pasts, and kind of, learn. And I feel now that I've found a lot of my lightness from the dark. And for the last, I'm 47, 46, 25 years, 30 years, I've been in that journey of just healing and finding the light in the darkness. And so, about 15, 12, I don't even remember, years ago, found, restorative justice, and got really excited that there was this thing there that was really about people and humanity and relationship and interdependence. This is restorative justice at its best. And quickly, soon after finding that, found sort of, mentors and beautiful people in peacemaking, and recognizing how much peacemaking sort of spoke to my own spirit and my own sense of these core values that were really about all these things about non-separation and about healing and about relationship. So I want to say a little bit about the ways that in the last, sort of 12, 15 years, I could see how I've remembered and I've watched other people in restorative justice sort of draw from peacemaking and really build their practices in restorative justice. And when I say the words restorative justice, we're talking about the same thing. Like I sort of said, as it's at its best, it's a community-based practice that is really relying on each other in relationships to heal and transform harm. And that we've learned most of these things from y'all. And so that's really at its essence and at its best. About 7 or 8 months ago, I was back in India, and there are a lot of people in India who are really interested in learning about how to do restorative justice. And we did a series of trainings, and the organization I started about 5 years ago is called the Ahimsa Collective. And Ahimsa is a Sanskrit word that means do no harm. So there was 7 of us. We went and we sat in a beautiful place with 25, 30 people from India across the country, from all the different cities, all the lawyers and social workers and beautiful humans and cultural workers and judges. And we started talking about restorative justice. And, one of the things about India is we also went through our colonization process, and it's only been 70 some odd years since the British left India. And so there's a lot of anxiety about getting it right in India, about being qualified, about being good enough and being professional. And this angst and anxiety about, I need the outcomes and the tools and just the language that people use around, how do you do it? What are the tools? What's the outcome? Like, am I qualified? And this really, I kind of call it like colonized anxiety about having to know and know in a very particular Western way. And these are my Indian urban people. And, we just sitting there together and trying to slowly decolonize and deconstruct and deschool ourselves to just say like, well, let's just talk about when do you remember ever sitting in a circle? Do you remember any community-based healing or justice practices that exist in your community or in your ancestry? And through that talk, just having people sort of one by one start to relate, oh yeah, I remember this circle I did when I was a kid. And I remember there's these folks that meet in Mumbai and Shivaji Park. And there are these people in the Bhil community and Nagaland and Ladakh, and they do these different practices. And it just sort of created this ease. And at the same time that we're sort of trying to decolonize ourselves as these intensely urban people, there was a parallel training or sort of convening happening in the same place we were in of young tribal leaders. And we were eyeing them at the, at the dinner table, and they were eyeing us at the dinner table. We were all eyeing each other. And finally we met and shared. And when we were sharing what we were doing, we had some chuckles from the young tribal leaders who said, one of them I remember really specifically, his name was Thungpa, and he was from Nagaland. And he said, this is what we do all the time. And we have this practice in Nagaland called Saras Salam. And he said, when there's a conflict in our community, actually what we do is we don't actually talk about it. We get together and we have a feast and we drink tea. And we just be together. And it's the being together that heals the harm that happened. And I was so floored because it started to make me remember all of the times that that's actually what I wanted to do in conflict. I didn't want to talk about it. I knew that if I just was with the person or had tea with them, I would actually we would be able to heal something, a rupture that happened. And then there was another young man, his name was Biren, and he also laughed at us. And he said in their community in Madhya Pradesh, their tribal community, they have this process called the halmat. And anybody at any time can call a halmat, which means that if you say halma, that somebody comes and fixes your roof. If you're a widower and you need money, if you have some conflict that's happening, you say halma, and people in the community come. And that's a form of collective healing and collective justice. And it just occurred to me when I was making these notes that actually we just about a month ago, well, no, that's not true, about 4 months ago, in response to COVID, we started this network called Mutual Aid and Restorative Justice, because we know what those terms mean, but really it's a halma. That's what we're doing. So we're creating a network where if anybody says, hey, I don't know how to use technology, we find somebody who also said they know how to use technology to help that person. Hey, I need a ride. Somebody yesterday, my partner, Richard, was looking for a ride for somebody.
Apologies for interrupting. I just wanted to let you know we have 3 minutes left.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. Who found a ride for someone who offered a ride, so that we learned kind of how to do that. So that these are the ways that we're kind of remembering our practices. I'll just share sort of maybe one more and then end there, which is back to a more personal one, which is learning quite deeply from the Indigenous peacemaking communities how a sense of responsibility has really created accountability. I remember going to visit Justice Yazzie in the Navajo Nation maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and hearing from peacemakers who were talking about how when people came who were in harm's way and started to be able to name their relationships, that sense of responsibility really created a sense of accountability and a healing and stopped recidivism. And that was another really poignant moment for me in my personal journey. As a result of my own sexual trauma or harm, I used to do a lot of shoplifting. And it wasn't until I was teaching in a school and I had these kids that I absolutely loved, and I was 20 years old. It was right after college. And I was going into a store and I was about to take something. And it wasn't because I needed it, it was just the result of my own crazy trauma. I remembered the kids, and it was the kids that actually stopped me. Just the thought in my relationship to the kids that actually stopped me from doing something. And that was a lesson in accountability. And I've learned so much from hearing these stories and these little gems of wisdom in terms of how peacemaking has really informed my own restorative practices and the restorative practices that we do. And so I just wanted to share a little bit with you. Thank you so much for having me as your little RJ cousin here. And I'm looking forward to hearing the rest from Auntie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like giving you a virtual hug. Yeah, everybody does. Anyway, I'd like to introduce our next guest, and we're going to get back to aunties, but I'd like the Honorable David Rush. I like the way he told us to remember his name. I can't help but smile. His honor is an enrolled member of the Stockbridge Munsee Band of Mohican Indians. He has a lengthy and distinguished legal career. Currently he's retired, but he's an independent consultant, and he enjoys his family and his dukundes, his grandbabies. The Honorable Judge is an alumnus of the National Judicial College, and he's on the faculty of the National Tribal Judicial Center at the National Judicial College since 2002. Your Honor, I would like to welcome you to the panel, and to hear your words of wisdom would be amazing. And then I'll come back and have our sisters from Hawaii close out. And with that, Your Honor, you're on.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. I noticed on the agenda it says I'm supposed to offer some words of wisdom. My disclaimer is that I'm enjoying my retirement now, and I was really having fun in retirement until I got involved in this Zoom conference, and I start seeing faces of people that I've worked with over the years, and it's important a peacemaking thing. And And now I got lonesome for all the travel and all the conferences and all the meals that we had out together and the conversations. But what really is encouraging is to see the next generations involved in this process, in this conference. It comforts me to know that somebody is carrying on. But my disclaimer is, if I'm going to offer words of wisdom, I have to let you know that all of my wisdom is plagiarized. My stupidity is still original, but my wisdom is plagiarized. I learned so much from my grandpa, Robert Yazzie, from my brothers, Mike Jackson, Mike Petoskey, Tim Connors, my sister, Cheryl Fairbanks, and a ton of others. I've been carrying this little notebook with me for around 20 years. And I write notes and quotes, but I never write any dates in there. So I don't know when Tim Connors said that the adversarial process is focused too much on money and too little on caring. I think he repeated that as saying it's too focused on process and too little on caring. So I've got quotes in here from the experts in the world from years and years and years, and I use them. So if you want to sue me, you guys go ahead for plagiarizing your wisdom. But most of all, I want to acknowledge my mentor, the best peacemaker I've ever encountered in my life, and that would be my late Aunt Dot, my mom's sister. I heard from my Aunt Dot and others that there'll never, ever be peace in Native communities as long as one child suffers. And I heard some general talking about peace in the Middle East and saying that there'll never be peace in the world until we can love our children more than we hate each other. But then I heard a Native American speaker one day said, there will be peace in the world someday. And it's going to be the Native Americans leading the way. And I thought about that for a while. Can we do that? Are we up to that? Can we lead this world to a peace, a world peace? I think we can. But first, we have to be spiritually healthy as individuals. We cannot talk peace if we don't have the peace within us. Peace is like it's like a safe with a combination lock, and the combination's inside our heart. We have to open that heart up, and we have to start thinking of peace. Our minds are so cluttered these days with politics and division and COVID and whatever is on TV. I step outside when it just becomes overwhelming, and I'm knowing that I'm out of balance. If I'm out of balance, I can feel it. I step outside and I say, okay, let's look at nature. What is my heart learning? What is my heart seeing? What is my mind telling me? My heart still is pretty pure. My mind is pretty screwed up. And to get to the peacemaking, we have to get to that heart. And I think as Native Americans, we have a tremendous advantage of going back to our creation stories. We can go back to those original instructions of what our roles and responsibilities were in this world. And then move toward the present day and find out where we started disrespecting our women, abandoning our children, Let's go back there and find out where that connection broke down. The system that we're working in, it deals with us when we're out of balance. It grabs us, it tries us, it puts us in prison if we're guilty. It punishes our behavior, and it does nothing to change that behavior, or very little. Sometimes they pat themselves on the back with a number of programs in prison. But I've spoken to a lot of inmates, and I asked them, when your sentence is up and you get out, will you feel that you have repaired the harm of your actions? That's the healing. That's the restorative. That's the repairing. That's what peacemaking is about. We're dealing with people many times that have never learned responsibility. And then we take them and we put them in a place and take all responsibility away from them. We tell them when to eat, when to sleep, when to shower, when to exercise. And then 10, 15, 20 years later, we let them out, and 6 months later, they're back. And we sit there and we scratch our heads, so why didn't they learn? Well, we didn't teach them anything. There's a little short story about Leo, who didn't know how to swim. And
Apologies for interrupting. Just a gentle reminder, we have 3 minutes.
good, I got a 3-minute story. Little Leo didn't know how to swim. And in his circle of friends, that was a requirement that you had to know how to swim. So this group of boys went down to the pond one day and we were swimming, and Leo was standing on the shore. Well, he didn't know how to swim, so the kids went and got him and threw him in. Well, Leo sunk. So they dragged Leo out and they said, Leo, it's a law in our group that you have to know how to swim. So they took him up the hill and they locked him in the shed for an hour. Well, after an hour, they took him back down to the pond, and they threw him in, and Leo sunk. So they get Leo and they drag him out, and they said, Leo, we told you if you want to be a part of this society that you have to know how to swim. And now you're a repeat offender. So they took him up the hill and they locked him in the shed for 2 hours. Well, after 2 hours, they took him out, took him back down, they threw him in a pond. We all know what happened. This is exactly how our prison system operates. They weren't teaching Leo how to swim. We're not teaching our people how to be, accept the responsibilities that were given us at creation. So my last words of wisdom, don't overcomplicate peacemaking. I hear rules, I hear procedures, I hear processes. It's not that complicated. Just keep talking.
Oh, Jehovah Gaga, we're going to call you Gaga. That's Uncle David. Thank you so much. That was awesome. We're going to ask that our sisters from Hawaii close out this session. We have 10 minutes and they're back online again. And so I'm calling for Auntie to come back, and Manu. If you can join us and then close this session out, you'll get a little time warning at a certain time. And I think they're online, is that correct? I believe so. I'm hoping so. And I
believe so.
Yeah,
We're
they look
here.
like, oh,
Mahalo
you're here,
nui.
okay.
Mahalo nui.
Okay, sister,
Aloha mai.
Jadas,
Okay.
go for it,
Okay,
Aunties,
Auntie
close it
Annette.
out.
Hiki no.
Go.
Hiki no.
Okay. I was talking about Ho'oponopono and the tremendous kind of impact on the lahui of Hawaiians that also benefit non-Hawaiians. I've tested it out with other groups of people. And I have to be mindful in how I translate the Hawaiian in a way that they understand. And language often is a barrier because a Hawaiian word has many meanings, and to translate that using words alone may not be as effective. So I use Hawaiian storytelling as a method to transmit this kind of information by giving an experience. The experience allows people then to connect with what is happening in my story and if it has meaning for them. Because Ho'oponopono is powerful, not just for the family, but for our relationship with the Honua, earth, with the Aina, land, the ocean, the Kai, the heavens. While working at the University Systems of Hawaii, School of Social Work, as well as at University of Hawaii, West Oahu, we have talked about the importance of indigenous ways in health and healing. And it's done in such a way that I'm very mindful the students who register are not necessarily Hawaiians, from all walks of life. So the way that I'm able to talk about the use of this Hawaiian indigenous practice is to give a story. And then to point out the levy. Do you have something similar from your family lines? So at West Oahu, we have chosen to go on the pathway of looking at how do we bring balance, not just to families, but at a more basic level, the individual, so that they are empowered with tools to bring life or situations back into harmony and balance, and that restores their ability to emit aloha. We have courses designed along a continuum that focuses on the individual. Pono, how do you make yourself pono? And then we have a course in looking at how do you help a family system to become pono? But we also talk about how do you take this practice and translate it into how do we help the Aina and the ocean to become pono? So I have been very fortunate to have been given an opportunity to work with students, and sharing the knowledge and information to me is not sufficient. It's in how you apply it. That's really important, because the concepts I talk about are located and printed in a book by Mary Kavenapukui, my grandmother. But it's limited in how you apply it. And for me, Ho'oponopono is a living practice. It's not one to remain in the books. And in the institutional system, teaching without laboratory work for application is information only from the head to the neck. How you apply it has to be mentored. And you got to work with the hands. Makahana kaike. In the doing comes the knowing. And the Hawaiian way is form, learning the concept on a conscious level. And makahana kaike, using the hands to make it work, means using it in a living way. So when we talk about Ho'oponopono in the family, It's really about restoring love, harmony, and balance. When we use it in the community, it's talking about recognizing what what ideas are common to a lot of people, uh, those that are unique to certain areas are dealt with those communities. But we have learned to translate how to work with our environment, the Honua. And at West Oahu, we have termed we need to honor the land. By honoring the land and taking care of the land feeds us. And it's a reciprocal, sustainable process. Being mindful, we use, but we put back. We take, but we don't deplete. And these are practices, when translated from Hawaiians, make sense to other people. As an island society, we are faced with depletion. And so we cannot delay it. So we have a program where we're going to ho'oponopono with the Aina, but we have projects to restore the Aina, to bring it into balance. And we help our students to recognize that that is a sustainable practice that allows us to be of service, not just to help ourselves, but for mankind. So aloha, as I started out with that concept, is recognizing you cannot deplete our resources without reaping negative consequences. And we mobilize the force behind these values so we can translate in projects that will benefit mankind. Here in these islands, we are already confronted with depleting resources. And so we cannot just keep it with small projects. We have to get it out to our people here and get them into the mindset of restoring what's the underpinning of the Hawaiian way, of the Hawaiian practice, and mobilize them with opportunities to learn by doing. Intention of developing healers, students who learn about pono can practice how to bring balance in themselves, but also in others that they encounter off balance. So their own home lives, they have a chance to practice. They don't need a degree. It's home therapeutic. But as they learn that process within the home, and they encounter it in their walk of life in the greater community, they can apply that process of pono, which allows resiliency to come forth, because it is a self-reflection of what I am doing that's causing the problem, and the recognition I am part of the problem if I continue doing what I'm doing. So I have to make a different choice. If I value that, I have to do something else. If you value aloha and you value love of your family and humanity, you make that decision to change in a way that will benefit mankind. And so at West Oahu, we have taken it into the university system to look at the process that begins with the individual, then in the home, and then move on. So Ho'oponopono is awesome. And I restore the aina, the land, the environment is cultural landscaping. So I think we've got something good happening here, and we've translated it not just for Hawaiians, but for all of us as well.
Okay.
So that's what I have to say.
Mahalo, Auntie. Mahalo nui, everyone, for your readiness and your willingness to allow this type of clarity to be expressed. Mahalo nui.
Mahalo.
Yeah, hina, hina.
Ahuiho.
That's our Ike Kupuna at its best. Aloha mai.
Oh, thank you for Hawa for sharing. That was so, I had the best panel. Oh, Sonia, thank you. Hawa, Judge Rush, amazing words. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Maybe I just want to give you a hug over there so bad. Anyway, did you want Manu, do you have any closing words to move us on? Just, I want to hear one sentence of wisdom from Manu. Yes. And then we'll move on. I read so much about you. You have so much wisdom. I just want one thought.
Okay, here's the one thought, Lisa. It's from our kupuna,
Okay.
Hale Makua. He says, truth is the highest goal, and aloha is the greatest truth. And so that's exactly what you've been saying, Auntie. Pono is the highest goal, and aloha is the greatest pono. So it's just what the uncles and aunties were saying earlier. Uncle David, that was just brilliant. Uncle Robert, mahalo nui. It was such an honor to bear witness to how the mind goes into our hearts and what that amplification does for our people. So once again, Hale Makua, our kupuna, said, aloha, truth is the highest goal, and aloha is the greatest truth. So pono is the highest goal, and aloha is the greatest pono.
Wow.
Aloha mai.
Jehovah. And with that, I will pass off to our next host, back to Christy, I believe. Jehovah, ladies, big love, big mwah.
Thank you, you too. Our final capstone will be led by, going to pass it over to Veronica, who will introduce the two presenters for the capstone. Veronica, it's yours.
Great, thank you. It's just so amazing to be in this colloquium. And I know it's hard and everybody wishes they could give hugs, but I truly feel all of the love and all of the hugs going around. And it is my honor to be able to introduce, I'm gonna probably always call him Judge Thorne. I met him probably 15 years ago at the National Casa Association when we were trying to change things. And he was on the board. I worked for the agency and they weren't ready for that. We had a Native American committee. I was on that. Hispanic committee. I was on that. We were on an African American committee. I was on that. And listening to him and being able to travel with him, I really learned that I had to be patient, and there was going to be some organizations that aren't ready for you. They're just not ready for you, and you have to go on and do your good work somewhere else. So as I was reading his bio that I've seen several times, I thought, I'm going to look online. Is there anything else about Judge Thorne? And Judge Thorne has a Wikipedia page. That is something I didn't know. He has a lot of things on here, and all of us that know him, or we think of all the good works he does, all of us could add to that. So I was just truly amazed that he had this page. And I've been reading a lot of his stuff because here in New Mexico, we're trying to create a peace court in the 2nd, 1st, or the 11th, I think was the other option. but I'm really excited about that. And the capstone's going to be with him and Monica Zamora. Judge Zamora, like Judge Thorne, I met a good 15 years ago and started working with them. And Judge Zamora, both of them are retired, but they're not. Judge Zamora has been recently retired, and she's giving back. She's on the New Mexico CASA board. She is on one other board, but she's on all these other groups giving back. And that's what they both do. They have so much knowledge and so much love in their hearts that when someone says, hey, we're going to get this going, they bring their expertise. But more important, like Inky talks about love, and I love putting your hand on your heart, is they bring their heart. And Judge Zamora brings her ganas. That ganas is Spanish for that desire. She has this huge ganas to make sure that children are being served. And on that, I'll hand it over to Judge Thorne and Judge Zamora for the capstone. Thank you.
Thank you. I am humbled by those words, especially after hearing so much wisdom today, and almost more inspiringly from the young people last night. I wish I had learned all the things people were talking about today at the beginning of my career, not at the end. What I have learned are from making the mistakes, from doing it wrong. But it gives me hope that so many people are coming together to find a new way. So I've been tasked with imagining what the future might hold, given peacemaking as an ingredient. And in these troubled times, there's a restless, urgent, overdue demand for justice by so many people, and yet falls on deaf ears for so many people. We're feeling a sense of isolation and helplessness that has disrupted even more lives than usual when an unseen virus sweeps across our communities. We have frustrations around the world and in this country, and problems and needs in communities and families. And our country is so divided right now, it is so difficult to even carry on a reasonable conversation with somebody who believes differently than we do. We need to find a path to peace and to justice. A good place, not just in the absence of conflict, not just in the absence of soul poisoning hatred, and not just in the absence of mistreating others, but to find a way to a good place. The current model that this country uses for dispute resolution and solving problems, we have to remember, is modeled on the European model, which was trial by combat. God would decide who the winner was, and if you weren't the winner, you died. Might or power was right. And that's morphed into our courtrooms now, where now it's a battle of attorneys. And there's a widespread belief that the best attorney wins, not that the right result ends up happening, but that the best attorney wins. Or alternatively, that as long as we can make sure that the process is fair, the justice will result. Well, first of all, you have to believe that the process is fair, and there's so much evidence that it's not. But we're asked to believe that if the process is fair, justice will result. But I don't know how anyone can reasonably argue that we're getting good results from our justice system. Even if the process is truly fair, we get poor results. We have decision makers who make moral judgments about the fitness or fault of the people involved. We have decision makers who issue orders and plans. We have decision makers who demand compliance and accompany that by threats. And the question you have to ask is, if that system is fair, why are so few problems being solved by declaring a winner? Why does it cost so much money to declare a winner? After 40 years as a judge, I have come to believe that the first step to solving problems is building resilience and healing is through listening. Listening to the people who have the most invested in solving this problem and who, by the way, most closely live with the problems. Resilience is that quality that enables healthy survival. And finally, Western science and tribal knowledge have gotten to the same place. That resilience is built on relationships. And relationships are built on understanding and connection. So if we can solve problems and heal, not just declare winners and losers, we need to be supportive of people in pain, in need, in distress. We need to be respectful of the people who are involved in the process. Our ideas and our actions and our plans have to be key to success, not catching failure. And there's an incredible power of I believe in you. In talking with parents who have lost their kids in the foster care system and been able to reclaim them, 100% of those people said someone in a place of authority said and meant what they said, I believe in you. You can do this. It wasn't just a plan. It wasn't just sanctions. Somebody believed in them as a human being. And I've come to believe that listening and collaboration in search of a better way is the only way to get to success. So peacemaking involves shared relationships that advantage each person and everyone in the process by continuing a relationship in healthy and productive ways. It is the exact opposite of the dispute resolution system in our country today, where what happens in the courthouses in this country is a zero-sum game. Someone has to lose so someone else can win. Peacemaking involves, I think, increases the likelihood of success in the short term because you're searching across a wide range of people looking for solutions, looking for approaches that might work. Peacemaking increases the likelihood of long-term buy-in because they're part of the solution. They have an investment in making this work. And if it doesn't work, then finding another alternative that will make it work. Peacemaking is a process that values every participant's perspective on the problem. If you take as an example one of those multicolored beach balls, inflatable, and you hold it up, and you ask the person across the room from you, what colors do you see? They'll give you 3 or 4 colors, and then you turn it around and it's something different. You need that perspective from all the places if we're going to identify what the problem is. And if we can't identify what the problem is, how do we find a solution? So we need that perspective from all those points of view, everybody who has a stake in solving that problem. So we ask first, what is your view? What do you think the problem is? And then second, what can you bring to the solution? Because we're not asking experts to solve problems for people. That hasn't worked. We have to enable, we have to empower people to create their own solutions, their own answers. And the peacemaking process honors all those participants. It doesn't just decide who the winners and losers are. So after 40 years as a judge, respect and relationships are the key to solving problems and healing of all our relatives. But we need to infuse those practices in more than just the courts and in more than just legal disputes. And if we can do that, if we can listen respectfully, if we can help, if we can be there to walk next to the people, not just order them to go down the road, then we can begin to solve problems and heal. And maybe, just maybe, a respectful process that honors all the participants in the discussion can help guide us out of a place we find ourselves in this country today, to a place where real justice is a birthright for all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica, for the introduction, and Judge Thorne, thank you for your words of wisdom. On behalf of the Planning Committee, the presenters, and most importantly, all those that we advocate for, I want to thank you for attending this virtual colloquium. It has been an incredibly powerful and moving day. Your participation in today's colloquium indicates a willingness to look outside the box. The time is now, the time is right, that we look forward. We either continue to resolve injustices and inequities in the same old way, or we can take advantage of the timing and explore the peaceful, progressive, and productive groundwork of peacemaking that will affect generations to come. This pandemic has changed the way that we look at life, whether we like it or not. It has given us the choice to regard it as either an obstruction with an inability to move forward, to be stuck where we are, or we can choose to look at it as a stepping stone with the ability or opportunity to reflect on how we have operated in the past, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and now turn to our creative side to continue the momentum forward in this positive, productive manner. Katrina, if I could get the first slide. We are the sum of our experiences. When each of us comes to the circle, we bring our experiences with us. The circle gives us an opportunity to be curious, be conversational, be real, and not only listen, but hear, or as Judge Petoskey called it, active listening. To me, that distinction is critical. The definition of listening is to give one's attention to sound. The definition for hearing is to become aware or conscious of something. When you engage in active listening, you digest the words of the speaker and you give them thought. I like this quote because I think it appropriately fits for today. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German theologian who was raised in a middle upper class German family of physicians and scientists. When he expressed an interest in pursuing a career in theology, he was strongly discouraged by his parents. Obviously, he didn't pay attention to them for our benefit. He spoke up against Hitler and Nazi Germany. Eventually, he was arrested and died in a concentration camp just a few months after his 39th birthday. He had the courage and the conviction to do what he thought was necessary to move forward. His life story reveals a man of great conviction who was willing to go against the norm to do what he thought was right. His life is a challenge to all of us to pursue a more just community. Thank you to our elders, the trailblazers, and the visionaries of peacemaking, and for possessing such a dynamic commitment to the process. By breathing life into and expanding peacemaking in the tribal and state systems, you have continued a tradition and you began a tradition of weaving a complex, compassionate, resilient fabric of justice and equality that provides the safety net, the springboard, and the toolbox to resolve issues that may lie ahead. This fabric is laced with empowering human resources of the peacemakers, the parties, other circle participants, and the communities in which we live. By wrapping people in this inspiring cloak, it allows them to be active and inclusive in making very important and informed decisions that can have a tremendous effect on their lives, the lives of others, and thereby strengthening this powerful old and new cloak of justice and equality. Katrina, if I could get the next slide, please. The future is not what it used to be. We have been presented with circumstances that provides us with a reflective opportunity. We would be remiss to not take advantage of that opportunity. As Lisa Lang told us this morning, the present is out, and I'm circling all of our responsibility. We have the affirmative duty to evaluate who we are, connect with our heart-based emotions, where we are, and how we will move forward. With this model for peacemaking, we are beginning the process of strengthening the weave of the future cloak of justice and equality for generations that have come before us. Or excuse me, to come, and we must lead by example. We are who we are because of the generations that have come before us. Our children and our children's children will be who they are in part because of us and what we do with this new information, equalizing the power dynamic, giving the parties a voice, entering the circle with intention, embracing the shift from an adversarial process to a process that includes an important healing component. I thought that Micheala Madrid's quote yesterday from Maya Angelou was like spot on. And Micheala, I hope I wrote it down correctly. You had said, the quote was, "We do what we can until we know better. When we know better, we do better." The future of our children and our children's children and the world will be determined by their ability to make it in this world in a positive, inclusive, and healing manner, which in turn will affect them and in turn affecting the future of our communities and mankind. Let's see if we can take what we've learned today and move forward to that field, shrouded in this very strong and nurturing cloak of justice and equality, and just be together so that our souls, our minds, and our hearts are full. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Judge Zamora. Now for our final closing, I am going to hand it off to Chief Justice Briscoe, and then I will close in prayer.
Good evening. I'm sharing you something that Judge Lisa shared with us this morning, and she said our voices are very strong, and from listening from the panelists and the presenters all day this morning, this evening, you can be assured that our voices are strong. Everybody coming together and giving us some guidance from where you're from makes it feel that we are going in the right path. I'm given the task to thank everyone. I would like to thank the presenters who shared their wisdom, the peacemakers, the leaders, our allies, our tribal citizens, our students, our professors, and the planning team. This planning team has put together, it's been many months that we've worked together to try to put this together as far as more or less with virtual, with this virtual conference. And it was no easy task. You know, during the day you can see some spots here and there, but those are challenges that, you know, it's going to get better. And, you know, even if we had these little glitz here and there, I think the overall conference went well. Everybody just kept the beat going. They never stopped. And just to hear everybody speak and their wisdom, it made me feel good that we are on the right path. And taking something that Cheryl had said to me a long time ago, that she says, you know, what I say is, from this virtual conference, a fire has been lit. So wherever you go, keep your fire burning bright and never let it go out. Keep the fire in your journey. With that, I thank you very much. I appreciate you letting me be involved with this conference, and wherever we go next year, I hope to see you personally and hopefully to, you know, talk with you. Thank you very much.
All right, let us end in prayer. Hona on tachigat, hona on to on awilona. Tumun ella kole andikwa. Hona to dil ay ihapukeke. Hon iyanse manawan akke. Hon iwillapa ikwanike nawan. Ella kwa hona to ate yake. Hona to yam isha malte. Tsume wake. Awili hashina elaya. Ella kwa hona wanto ikena kona. Tuman haitosnan isha malte taatu. Tuman ella kole andikwa. Tuman isha malte shiin ayulla shikenatu. May we be always thankful to Creator and thank Him for bringing us all together to do His work, to love one another, and to hold each other up. Thank you for everyone for being here, and thank you. May you bless them as they go to their separate place, to our separate places, to our homes. May you help us to always remember that when we remember your words and place them in our hearts, that you will always bless us, always take care of us, and always watch over us. Let us never forget who we are in you. You have given us gifts. You have given us courage. You have given us a voice. These things we thank you. Tamanhila pashtek tawak Yeshua lechilona. Anshi nakya. Deusukya. Elaka. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Everybody
Thank
breathe.
you all.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Yes. Thank you,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl,
Thank
for
you.
envisioning this and making it happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Goodness, cheese, you all were just so superb. My heart is full and I feel like my cup is running over, and from all directions of the country. And it was really us and together in unity that we came together, and that ripple effect's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I could just see it. I could see it in everyone's presentation. I was just amazed. So, goodness cheese, as they say in cake. Goodness cheese, ho ho.
Get some rest.
And thank you to the young people who
Thank you, everyone.
who made this
Good
happen.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Aloha.
Bye.
Well
Aloha.
done. Well
See
done.
you.
Well
Bye.
done. Micah.
Katrina, can you stay on, please?
Yes. Yeah.
She's a taskmaster.
Bye.
Bye, Dine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Katrina, I just downloaded the chat. Did you download it?
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, I just saved it, but I mean, there were a couple more messages that came in.
Yeah, there's still a couple more.
And Katrina, thank you, and Christy and Veronica so much for keeping us moving. That was such a hard job.
You did great, Katrina.
I was so happy that, Katrina, you're so brave and courageous. Thank you, you guys, and for your patience and your creativity and your courage to just keep going forward. I just think it was remarkable. And what's remarkable, Veronica, is so close to the ICWA one that we still were able to have kind of a different perspective. You know?
But still get a lot of people. That one we had was 169. I think this one was up about that amount. So we have to keep it rolling. I think it would be really great to figure out, because on the ICWA one, I'd already talked to Senior Justice Behill, and she wanted to do a podcast. You should do some podcasts off of this, like the
Yes.
You could post that at NARF or different places where you're going to be. So let's talk about that next.
Do you have that capability?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We could do all of that. We got some new equipment. So okay, we'll see.
Well, thank you. Gosh, cheese. You guys get some rest and don't take any phone calls from anyone. Put a block on it. Bye-bye. Alakwa. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you need anything else?
No, just wanted to say thank you.
Oh,
yes, you were so good, and for sticking with us.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
get some rest.
All right, see you. Drive safely.
Thanks.